Hello, everyone, and welcome to the introduction to research methods in psychology, Module 4. There is a huge possibility that you will hear some noises at the background. Those are my husband and my two dogs trying to communicate in a very stressful situation. You know, one of my dogs went to a hairdresser, and now my second dog freaks out about it. But let's stop talking about my private life and start talking about research methods. The topic of today's lecture is psychological measurement. Well, psychological measurement is not that different from any other measurement in your life. If you want to buy a furniture, you have to measure your room. In this case, you assign a score in centimeters to a part of your room, and this score in centimeters represents the size of your room. Using a very similar logic, in psychology, we assign a score to individuals, and this score can represent some characteristic of these individuals. For example, we can measure individuals' height in centimeters or inches, age in years, or weight in kilos. We can ask somebody about their birth order. Are they a firstborn child? Or are they a middle child? Or maybe they are the baby? Another example will be physiological measures. For example, heart rate, blood pressure, pupil size, or neurotransmitters. Psychological constructs is a little bit special case. Psychological construct cannot be observed directly. There is no device that can measure self-esteem, intelligence, or anxiety level. And of course, psychological constructs is exactly what we as psychologists deal the most. I really like this definition of psychological construct I stole from the Reddit. Psychological construct is a structured, fixed belief about another person or group of people. There are some examples of psychological constructs: parenting style, culture, mood, or personality. So if we cannot observe psychological construct directly, how can we measure it? For that, we need two things. First, a conceptual definition. The conceptual definition of a psychological construct are the behaviors and internal processes that make up this construct. The conceptual definition also includes how this construct relates to other variables. There is pretty nice example in the textbook about neuroticism scale from the Big Five. People who score high on the scale of neuroticism will have a high tendency to experience negative emotions such as anxiety, anger, and sadness. Let's find out another example. There are 4 types of parenting. Parents who exhibit authoritarian type of parenting usually prefer one way of communication style. They establish strict rules that they are expected from the children to follow without any further questions. To successfully measure a psychological construct, we also need an operational definition. An operational definition of psychological construct is a definition in terms of how it will be measured. One psychological construct can have and usually have more than one operational definitions. There are 3 types of operational definitions. First type are self-report measures, such as questionnaires, structured and unstructured interviews. Second type are behavior measures. In this case, behavior should be understood very broadly. An example can be an observation experiment where a researcher measured some kind of psychological construct with a types of the behavior subjects are showing. A classical experiment of Albert Bandura on child aggressiveness level is a good example for behavior measure. After children looked how an adult was very aggressive with a Bobo doll, they were left for 20 minutes alone with the same doll. Researchers counted all the type of aggressive behavior a child exhibits towards the Bobo doll. In this case, an operational definition of aggressiveness would be a number of all these aggressive acts. We can give an operational definition for aggressiveness using physiological measures. There are some hormones that are associated with high and low aggressiveness. For example, serotonin is associated with low aggressiveness. Norepinephrine is associated with high aggressiveness. Circling back on self-report measures, can we measure aggressiveness using just self-reports? Of course, there are some questionnaires that are allowed us to measure it. As you can see, psychologists usually use more than one operation definition of the same construct. It is worth to mention about converting operations. When we measure the same construct using different kinds of measurements, we are expecting for the result to be closely related. For example, we are expecting the result of different IQ tests to correlate with each other. There are 4 different types of level of measurements. The first type is the nominal level. This type is used for categorical variables such as gender, sex, and ethnicity. Nominal variables do not have a natural order or ranking. When you code those variables, for example using SPSS, assign the value 1 for male or for female or for non-binary, it doesn't matter. The next level of measurement are ordinal level. Ordinal level of measurement are being used for variables that can be put in a ranking. Do you remember all these customer satisfaction questionnaires? Those are using ordinal level of measurements with a ranking from very satisfied to not satisfied at all. It is important to note that intervals between the ranks are not necessarily equal. For example, the difference in satisfaction between neutral and satisfied is not necessarily the same as between satisfied and very satisfied. The next level of the measurement is the interval level. An everyday example of using an interval level measurement is when you check your weather app to see how cold it will be today. An example from psychology measurements would be any IQ test. Measurement of temperature using Fahrenheit score and intelligence using an IQ score have something in common. There is no true zero. While it is possible to get 0 point on IQ test, it doesn't mean a complete absence of person intelligence. Also, a person who got 140 in IQ test is not 2 times more intelligent than a person who got 70 points. Still, a difference between 100 points and 90 points is the same as between 80 points and 70 points. The fourth level of measurement is ratio level. In this case, we can assign a true 0 point that represents a complete absence of this quality. An everyday example would be measurement of height in centimeters or weight in kilograms. There is a true 0. If something has 0 weight, there is 0 on the scale. Also, for example, something that weighs 10 kilos is 2 times heavier than something that weighs 5 kilos. Okay, let's say we assign some scores to the individuals. But how we can be sure that those scores measuring exactly what they are intended to measure? For that, we can use 2 characteristics of a measurement: reliability and validity. Let's start with reliability. Reliability tells us how constant the measurement is. There are 3 types of reliability. Test-retest reliability shows us how consistent is the measurement over time. If we give an IQ test for a person today and in 1 week, we are expecting them to achieve a very similar score. Of course, there can be some tiny discrepancies. This person can be tired, can be ill, or just remembered the right answers. Test-retest reliability are being assessed by testing a group of people at least 2 times. If we are expecting a psychological construct to be stable, for example, if we speak about intelligence, we are expecting for values from the first appointment and the last appointment to correlate. Again, not all measure instruments should have high test-retest reliability. For example, if we are testing somebody's mood, we are expecting it to change over time, and things have low test-retest reliability. Another kind of reliability is internal consistency. And this is consistency of people's responses to a different items on a multiple items scale. A typical test scale has multiple items. We are expecting a person's answer to the scale be consistent. To assess internal consistency, we use split-half correlation. Let's use part of STAI questionnaire for this example. We let a person to answer all the items from this scale. Then we split these items into halves, for example, the first 10 and the last 10, and see if those answers are correlated. If this measurement has high internal consistency, the answers on the first half of the items and the last half of the item should be correlated high and positively. A third type of accessing and measurement reliability is inter-rater reliability. Inter-rater reliability test is usually used when we would like to see how consistent two observers are. In one of my studies, we wanted to check if an infant was looking at the left part of the screen or at the right part of the screen. Usually, I would use an eye tracker for this task. But this study was conducted during coronavirus pandemic, and our little participants were at their homes. So I asked my research assistant to code the videos of infants to see where are they looking. Then I used a correlation to see how reliable their measurements were. To my full happiness, they were very high reliable. Now let's talk about validity. Validity tells us how the scores from the measurement represent the variable they are intended to represent. There are three kinds of validity. Let's start with the face validity. Face validity is the extent to which a measurement appears to measure the construct of interest. It is a pretty big type of measurement because it relies on people's intuition about the construct we are measuring. An example of a good face validity would be a math test that are testing your math abilities. But even high face validity does not guarantee that a test is actually valid in a scientific sense. It simply means that the test appears to be valid on the surface. Another type of validity is a content validity. Content validity ensures that the test includes all relevant aspects of a construct. If, for example, by construction, our final exam, I will create question only asking about construct validity, this test will have very low construct validity. Being more serious, here's an example of a test with a high content validity. Back depression inventory is a test that has a high content validity because it covers different symptoms of depression, such as mood, cognitive changes, and physical symptoms. Next type of a validity is a criterion validity. Criterion validity is the extent to which people's scores on a measure are correlated with other measures that one would expect them to be correlated with. For example, the results of job performance tests should be high positive correlated with a future employee job success. There are different possibilities to access criterion validity. To access criterion validity, we can look how measures are correlated with another criterion at the same time, then it will be concurrent validity, or at different times, then it will be predictive validity. An example for concurrent validity would be a negative correlation between social anxiety score and a number of public speech performances. An example for predictive validity can be a job performance test. A good job performance test should be highly correlated with a future employee successes at job. Access criteria validity. We can also compare scores of a new measurement with an old one. Let's say we are invented a new IQ test that takes half as long. We like to prove how good is this test compared to the old measure. We can ask participants to fill out our new IQ test and some well-established one, and see how well scores are correlated. Another case is discriminant validity. It shows how a new measurement is different from another one. We are afraid that some construct can have an influence on our measurement. As in a textbook example with mood and self-esteem, we are expecting for a good self-esteem measurement to be not correlated with a subject's mood. That was all for today. Thank you and goodbye.